Welcome, Sam.
Hey, thanks so much for having me here today. I'm excited to be on your podcast.
So we have been on this journey together, and I'm really excited to have you as part of my journey. But I would love to know about where your journey on this self-love, you're kind of part of the self-love movement right now. Where did that all start?
Oh, that's a great question. I think self-love started with consumption. I don't, where does the self-love journey start? Like, it's really something I think that's been happening on our planet for thousands of years. And, now we're really coming to a big head. And so when you ask me, like, where did my self-love journey start? I think it started from like the moment I was born, because as the second we're born, we're constantly told what to do, what we should do, how we should act, what we should look like. And then as media, especially mainstream media, has gotten so popular, and social media as well, it's just kind of heightened that awareness even more for self-love, because we're just having things shoved in our face so much. So really the journey for all of us begins, from the second that we come into this world.
Yeah. And you have such an amazing backstory of like where you've come from and like where you are now. Can you tell us a little bit about that backstory?
Yeah. So, it's really just like where you want to start. So there's lots of things that I've been through, and everyone has their own story, and personal stories are so important. So you guys, like, no matter what your story is, don't get caught in the comparison of it. Just keep showing up and sharing your story as well, because your story can help a lot of people, and I have lots of different aspects to my story. There's, of course, like I was a very young mom, went through a very like abusive, not healthy relationship. And then, it just kind of spiraled from there, where I went into a little bit of a depression and things like that, but really worked to pull myself out of it by feeding myself just lots and lots of self-love.
I love that. And when you say feeding yourself with love, what kind of things do you mean by that?
Well, I really like wine and cheese. There's like the actual aspect of feeding ourselves, which for some reason has been turned into this massive guilt cycle. And it's just another aspect of control and to not letting you love yourself. But really, like, feeding myself and enjoying what I'm eating has been immensely helpful. But like feeding myself with positive people around me, and feeding myself with, honestly, like anytime I have a negative thought or anything like that, instead of just running from it, I lean into it, which I guess would be a form of feeding myself, right? So I really just like lean into it, and I'm like, why am I thinking that? Why do I feel that way? And then just transmuting that into love. And I know it sounds so cheesy, but everything can be solved with love and compassion.
I completely agree. And that leaning in part is something I know a lot of people struggle with. Do you have any suggestions of how to start leaning in other than just leaning in?
Yeah, a lot of times people will do this thing where they're going through a thought process, right? Like, so you might get up and you might be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to use my butt. I've actually never, my butt, but I'm just going to say, like, you might wake up and you'd be like, oh my gosh, I hate my butt. And then the thought will continue spiraling, like, oh, it's because I'm so lazy and I don't do anything. Or, oh, it's because I do this or this or this, right? We all have our own form of poison that we're like, love to take, and we are a little bit addicted to these negative thought patterns. And so if you can do something called observing, where you just kind of pull yourself out and you're just observing the thought patterns that are going on, and instead of like what a lot of people do, they'll just like push it to the side, or they'll feel really shitty and they'll be like, oh, don't think like that, or oh, don't do that. But instead, if you can observe those thought patterns and really watch them and be like, okay, well, that first thought, was my butt. And the second thought was, I'm lazy and I don't do anything. Maybe the third thought was, oh, you shoved those French fries in your face yesterday, And then maybe the fourth thought was, your dad always told you that your butt looked bad. I'm just really using like an obscure example here. And so really the root of that thought pattern and that cause, that chain of existence that you're experiencing in your own mind. And literally when you have those thoughts, like you're causing yourself to experience this. So you're basically like feeding yourself a television screen of pain, And so if you can really be like, oh, well, it came from that initial thing when someone told me when I was younger that I was, my butt. I don't know why I picked my butt. I was like, my butt's like, hey. If you can go back to that and be like, wait, like when he said that, it might have been an abstract comment, maybe meant it as a joke, or maybe it was like maliciously intended to hurt you, and be like, wait a second, like that's not true. I'm sorry that that person was sad, and then tell that little girl like, hey, you're amazing and your butt is amazing too. And you just immediately reverse the cause of it. So what we tend to do, and even in like the positivity world, is, you'll hear people even say things like, man, mantras can fix everything. And they really can't, because if I'm just sitting here saying, I love myself, that's freaking awesome. But you're just kind of like masking what's really there at the root cause. So once you discover the root causes, and then, you could switch it, and then you could use mantras or positive sayings and be like, my butt is amazing, but like, you have to really, really find where it came from. And, you could get super woo with this too. Maybe it came from a different lifetime. I don't know. Maybe it's a collective energy thought that you're accidentally tapping into that has nothing to do with you, but you need to identify where it came from.
Yes, very important. So speaking of the woo side, now we're going to redirect to Sedona, because I know in Sedona I was with you on one of your retreats, which was absolutely amazing. And you were talking about this like awakening to be able to merge the woo with business and like start sharing that side of yourself. Like how is that awakening going, and what are you doing with it?
Oh yeah. So what she's referencing is that for me, I'm like, I really got to a point where I didn't want to talk about business anymore. And like, it's so great that you have a business. And when people come to me personally and they're like, I have this in my business, I'm like, here's some fun ideas for you. But like, people really need to be on their own journey when it comes to business. And there's just so much shit online. Like, as you know, right now, I've like deleted all my apps from social media, and people are like, you're fucking crazy. And I'm like, no, you're crazy. So we've fed into this idea of what our life should look like and what success should look like. And I just really got tired of talking about that. And so when Jennifer and I were in Sedona, I was talking about how I was like, I really just want to talk about like all the cool stuff that like is actually happening, that like we're too busy focused on these things that we've been told to focus on, that we are not seeing all these amazing things that are happening, And I was like, so I'd love to transition into more of just talking about like this, and talking about love, and talking about self-acceptance. And one of my theme is be your own girl crush. And so I just was like, I really just want to talk about like loving the hell out of your own life and your own self and your own worth and your own identification with being.
So since you're on this path and you've transitioned, like what feelings have shifted within your life and in your business now that you are willing to share this more woo connect with self side?
Well, I don't know. I don't really right now. I wouldn't say that I'm measuring the success of my business at all. So I don't really know how it pertains to it. Like, it's just kind of running, and I'm just like, what am I doing with my life? But really what it's done for me is it's opened this like stargate essentially. And I've really just been on this journey of what is truth, what is really happening right now, what, are all the things, that don't matter in my life that I thought mattered. You see so many women, and I'm not, if this is what you do, like you're a rock star, like don't, no judgment. We all go through things, but I see so many women toting, these lifestyles, and then telling everyone that like they have to follow this formula to achieve this lifestyle that they have. But their lifestyle is really based on consumption. Consumption of goods, consumptions of, driving the Range Rover, like having, the white, black backsplash, carrying the Louis Vuitton, jet setting all over the world. This travel is freaking epic, but you know what I'm talking about here. And so really what it's done for me is like kind of allowed myself to separate the truth of the world from what's kind of being fed as reality through social media and things like that. And so really trusting the woo, trusting the things that are happening in my life, that they are real, because when you go on a woo journey, you'll start to feel a little fucking crazy. And the bigger you get down the rabbit hole, the more you're like, you're telling me that there are aliens, and you're telling me, you know what I mean? Like, it tends to like really be a little crazy for you. So really like, you just have to trust yourself and like allow yourself to go on the journey. I don't know if that made any sense at all. I feel like I was in like 5 different places there.
It made sense to me. And that journey and like the woo side, and you're talking about aliens and stuff, I mean, that's perfect for right now. I mean, like we're recording this during the height of where most of us are shelter in place because of this virus. And a lot of that is coming to light. It's like a massive worldwide awakening for all the different aspects.
Yeah, so we are in an ascension period right now, and you can either choose to accept it, or the best definition I had of it was you can choose to let your ego go, or you can have it ripped from you. So I just encourage, I'm not sure when you air this. When are you airing this?
I think it's a week and a half from now.
Okay, so I just encourage
7th.
everyone to find the truth. Like, find the truth, find the truth, find the truth. Like, do any research you can. Do any, like, when you start looking at self-love and like why you've been filled with so much hatred, just coming back to the theme of this podcast, start asking yourself the root of that and where it came from. And, follow like the little rabbit holes, like do as much research as you can. I really encourage people to start like looking up. And I've been saying this, I'm like, look up to the stars, look up to the sky, but also look up the information. Like, it's common knowledge right now that the Google filters are going up and down, and you can Google pretty much anything. And if you Google something that's not popping up, Google it again in an hour, so really, like right now, it's like, look up to the sky and look up any information you can and really educate yourself about what truth is. And then, find that truth for yourself. It's all about finding it for ourselves. Right now, we're really called to connect to our heart centers, which is the center of love, right? And so we can like just connect to each other through love instead of judgment, instead of like our doing, right? A lot of times we look at people and they're like, oh, they really got their life together because they're always doing, and then they're always consuming, which I'm like, consuming to me is like consuming social media, consuming Netflix, consuming, goods, whatever it is. I'm not a hippie by any means. Like, I love great, what did I say, wine and cheese, right?
Yeah.
And I like nice things, but we're really starting to look at like what the truth is of that consumption and how it's keeping us really, really numb as spiritual beings.
And I love that that's what your community and the Girl Crush is like moving into, is like that connection to yourself and connection to spirit.
Exactly. So yeah, right now when we're recording this, I'm on like day 5 of my social media cleanse. I've been very social, which I know we're supposed to be practicing social distancing, but I'm like, there's nothing wrong with going to the park and riding your bike. Like, so Jennifer, you're in California. Like, can you guys go like out still? Because I know in some countries you can't.
We're allowed to go out. Everybody took advantage of that. So now all of our parks are officially roped off. So you can walk through your neighborhoods, you can go for essentials, but because people didn't understand social distancing, it's been beautiful here in Northern California. So the beaches were like 75 degrees. Everyone flocked out there. So now we have some new restrictions, but we can leave our house as long as we're just like going for a walk outside, or it's not, we're being patrolled a little bit more. As I'm saying this, there's cops driving by my house, but so that's how it is right now.
I'm in like Utah. There's a lot of space here. So like I can walk out like behind my house and like there's nothing for miles, I mean, it would take me weeks to walk to something. So we've been doing a lot of like hiking. I've been doing a lot of like soul searching, connecting. My kids officially started online school today. And right before I got on this podcast, I was like, I am frustrated right now because none of these little programs they use make any sense. I'm like, how do children navigate these? So it's just figuring out new systems and new things right now. But yeah, I mean, it's just, we're going into something new and it's incredible and it's an opportunity to rebirth. I've been telling everyone to stop pushing. Everyone's like, oh, I got to push this. Now is the time to be online. Now is the time for this. And it's actually not. Now is the time to just pause.
And tap into that feminine, slow.
The feminine energy. And the masculine, both are so, so important.
Yep. So in your community, how can people find you and get hooked up with the, love that you share? Because again, I think it's super important what you're doing. And I love the message behind Be Your Own Girl Crush.
Thanks. So right now, I would come into the community, the Girl Crush Alliance. I know it's still there's still stuff going on in there. I've had people reach out to me and they're like, are you okay? Like, I've noticed you went social silent. And I'm like, yeah, I'm totally fine. But the community's still there. It's still thriving. We had planned a whole bunch of upcoming events and I decided to put those on pause which is really fun because now I get to look at them and be like, ooh, what felt really, really good about this? And what felt maybe a little off of alignment, you know, maybe driven from like an ego perspective, and be like, ooh, how can I take the really, really good stuff and just like keep it in the really, really good stuff zone? So I think it's a great time right now. You know, I've seen so much stuff coming through my email inbox since I'm not on social media. It's so weird. But like just being like, now's the time to build your systems. Now's the time to push. Now's the time. Like, okay, when I was on social media a few days ago, I was like mind boggled, blown away with the amount of people that were telling people that it was time to like exercise and work out. And I'm like, what the fuck? So now is the time for you to get all that out of your perspective. And now is the time for you to get into your perspective of self-love. Like, you know, of course, like, you know, one thing I installed in my house is I said we have to like do daily movement so that we don't just end up sitting here. And, you know, so that for us has been like riding bikes and walking and things like that.
So you're taking your movement outside. So you're getting like a double whammy of like healing.
I am. And I know there are lots of people who can't go outside. My assistant who's worked with me for like the last 5 years, pretty much, she's in Spain and they can't go outside. So they've like she's been out on her porch a lot, but you can tell it's really taking a toll. But even, you know, just getting your body moving inside, because we do need to remember our bodies are, you know, our thriving points. Like we are in these vessels, or these vessels are us, however you want to look at it. But you know, you still got to like connect to your mind, you still got to connect to your soul, and you still got to connect to your body. So making sure that like those connections are still in place.
And how are you maintaining those connections now that you get to be a homeschool mom?
Oh my God. I'm like, this just occurred to me yesterday. I told my husband, I was like, oh, I guess I'm a teacher now. And he just like looked at me and I'm like, this is your point to like step in and be like, well, I'll help too. He goes to work. So he's at work right now. And, you know, honestly, everything's just been really quiet. So I feel like it's giving me the space to do that. I mean, I did have a little moment earlier where I was like, get out of bed. Like, you know, I have a teenager and, you know, I'm like, just was feeling super frustrated. And I'm like, I'm feeling really frustrated right now. Like I just said it and I just like walked out. Because it is all new territory. And so I think it's okay for us to be frustrated and maybe be a little angry, maybe be a little like pissed off, you know? And that's part of self-love though, is just realizing you're not going to walk around all the time being like, I love everything. You're going to be a little annoyed. And that's like, you have to love those parts as well.
Yeah, that give yourself grace, lots of grace.
Yes, I've said that a lot. I'm like, just give it grace. Like, be like, yeah, maybe I like screamed, you know, I'm sure that there's going to be times, I think especially like as more and more cities in the US go into lockdown, where people are going to feel really frustrated, like maybe you punched a hole in the wall, you know, like, you know, give yourself some grace, you know, and really just be as kind to each other as we possibly can. And if we do have those moments of like frustration, because, you know, like when you spend a lot of time like with someone, you know, your husband or whatever, whoever it is, maybe like, I know your husband's gone quite a bit for fire. Oh, yeah. And gone quite a bit for army. And it's weird, like you're so excited for them to come home, but then there's this period of frustration where you're like, what do you mean? What are we having for dinner? Like, what do you mean? What am I doing? And there's like, I was just genuinely asking like, what you're doing today, you know? So you're going to probably have that too going on, and just like giving yourself grace and be like, oh, sorry, this is a new process. Like, thanks for being patient with me.
So what are some non-negotiable you things that you're maintaining during this time of everyone being in our space?
Okay, so for me, I have been sleeping. Okay, like you guys, for years I was like, just get up at 5 a.m. If you can't get it done, you're not getting up early enough. So I got up at 4:50 a.m. for years, and I've been pushing myself. And I was like, do you know how much fun it is to sleep till 7? Getting up at 4 a.m. Amazing, right? So for me, it's just been sleeping. And, you know, there's people out there that are saying like, maintain your schedules, just act like it's normal routine. And I was like, you know what? I think this is a break for us to realize that our routine is a bunch of fucking bullshit.
Right.
And there's no reason. I can't even imagine what, you know, getting up. I get up at 4:50 and I immediately get up and I go to a high intensity cardio spin class, which I can't go to right now. So that was taken from me, which has been a gift as well. But there's like, that can't be good for your adrenals. And then I would just push from there. Like I would get home about 6:30. I would be like, I got to hurry and shower. I got to get kid 1 up, then kid 2. Then I got to do this. And then I got to be online. And then it's like, it was just go, 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 go. And I'm like, no fucking thank you. So like, honestly, the priorities for me are not having priorities. How's that, Jennifer?
I love it. So you're reevaluating what used to be important.
Yeah, none of that stuff's important, you know? And I do realize like my body is in the best shape that it's ever been in. And I'm like, I probably won't have the same cardio stamina, but I can get my treadmill out and like keep it going, you know?
If it
Like I don't want to get up at 4 a.m.
As long as it brings you joy, right?
Yeah. You know, feel your body. Like what feels good to you, like do it.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask my infamous question that I always ask. If somebody was to walk away from this podcast and only take one thing, and I looked it up, it's going to be aired on the Saturday, I think it's the 3rd. So what is one thing you want them to walk away with that is like that, you know, mic drop moment?
I think the mic drop moment is realizing that the mic drop moment is yours to take and not for me to tell you. So it's whatever feels really good to you. You know, maybe I said something in here and you're like, meh, I don't agree with that. Like you just find what feels good to you.
I love that. And where can everybody find you?
So my social handles are at the Samantha Parker and thesamanthaparker.com. And then the Facebook group, there's a little over 4,000 people in there. It's Girl Crush Alliance. And you can just search it up. I'm sure it'll pop up.
And I'll put everything in the show notes too. And your community, I haven't been taking a social media break, and your community is amazing still. Like I mean, hey. I miss your daily posts. Don't get me wrong. However, you have aligned with so many beautiful souls that there's still so much going on in there and so much positivity. I know you're taking a break from it, but it's amazing.
Well, it's not about me, like essentially, and I've said this for years. I'm like, communities aren't about you. And that's where the distinction comes from, is like, I'm just holding a space, right? I created a little container for people, but it has nothing to do with me at the end of the day.
Yep. And it's still going, and it's beautiful. So I recommend everybody get in there if you want to be your own girl crush.
Yeah. And I'll be back in there soon, so don't worry.
But I love that you're taking the break and you're taking this time for yourself. And, you know, it's been fun to watch your journey. I think I've been at first I cyber stalked you for a few years, and then I finally was like, I'm going to actually talk to you.
That's so funny. I know there's people that I meet in real life and I'm like, I've been following you for years online. And then it's funny though, when you get it reversed back to you, they're like, oh, I've just been so excited to meet you. And I was like, do I know you? You know? And then I'm like, wait, what? And you're like, oh yeah. So, you know, that's what's really cool about social media is there are some seriously negative aspects to it, but there are some amazing connections to be found. So if you can look for the connections versus the consumption, like that's what I'm encouraging everyone to do, is like look for the connections versus the consumption. I'm going to actually write that down.
Connections, not the consumption.
Yeah, because, oh my God, I know people from all over the world. So social media is pretty dope, but make sure, I think when we're consuming it, just where we've gotten to the point where instead of thinking for ourselves, we pick up our phone and we start scrolling, you know, or instead of talking to the person sitting next to us, we're just scrolling. And so if you can start to treat your social media a little differently than just like a mindless consumption, I think it'll help the world a lot.
Oh yeah. And I see that more right now is everybody wants that connection. There's a lot more direct messaging going on. There's been a lot of Zoom calls that are just popping up here and there. And it's been really cool. I'm really excited to see what happens after this mass awakening.
Right. We'll record post-apocalyptic. No, this isn't the apocalypse. This is totally different. But I actually put my podcast on hold, and I was like, I'm waiting till this is over because I think it's going to shift directions. So, yeah.
That's cool. That's another thing is your podcast. You had someone on the other day that was like astrology. I'm probably saying that right. And I was like, whoa, like she's found my people.
Yeah, I got a little like, you know, more alert about like curating, you know, a message versus just like putting mass stuff out there. So that's something else you guys can think about too during this time is like, what freaking message are we even putting in this world? Maybe we should be a little more consciously aware of our role in that message.
Yeah. And turn your light on.
That's what I always tell Jennifer, is to turn her light on. I don't know why. I was like, she's a light bulb and she likes to keep it off.
And it's always like, now I have pictures of light bulbs in my office just because
Yes.
it's been like, it was like such a small thing to say to me, but like, that's what you need to look for right now, is those little, somebody's going to say something to you that's going to like change your life. Be aware of those moments. Like, turn your light on. Like, everyone else is like, what does that mean? But to me, it's like everything shifted.
Yeah. And you have to notice what you notice. So notice what you notice and don't just dismiss it as bullshit. Like, really notice what you're noticing.
Yeah. So, well, thank you so much for being here. And I really appreciate your time and your message. And again, I'll put everything in the show notes because everyone needs to be their own girl crush if they want to crush it in life. That's just how I feel at this point. I just love your message.
Yeah, you have to freaking love yourself, you guys. Like, that's what it comes down to.
If you don't love yourself, you can't love anyone else.
Amen.
Well, thank you again.
Thanks, Jennifer.